Our next speaker is Jeannette Hanna. She's the Vice President of Brand Strategy at Trajectory, and she will address how we effectively can involve communities and stakeholders in place brand development, management, and implementation, which I think is a topic that increasingly is becoming a major challenge to place brand practice. She's a journalist by training, and she's the author of a range of publications on marketing, branding, culture. And I think her client roster really reflects her range, ranging from billion-dollar enterprises to places and cultural institutions. Jeannette, it's great to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
So my topic today is around engagement. So I thought, first of all, I just want to, there's going to be a little public engagement with this group here to start with. So I just wonder, how many of you are sports fans? Sports fans, yeah, okay. How many of you are soccer fans? Oh, okay, all right. So I need somebody to catch this for me. Here we go. Pretty good talk. Pass it on here. So, keep moving that around. So what I'm going to talk about is engagement. What does it mean? Why bother? And some new ideas about that. That's great. The reason this is out there is because that red ball there is from a project called, well, it's an international NGO called Right to Play. And what that is really an empowerment program for kids in refugee camps. But it's all embodied in that ball because that ball is the catalyst for kids starting to play together. So that's what engagement is all about, is giving people the ball and letting them run with it. Okay, so you guys can do whatever you want with that. I just need it back at the end of the presentation. But in the meantime, it's yours. You get to play with it, move it on, and the message on there is a really powerful one. So, I mean, I'm sure everybody does a certain amount of consultation with the nature of the kind of work we do. But engagement is a whole other order here. Citizens are engaged when they play an active role in not only defining the issues, considering solutions, and identifying what are the resources or priorities, what are the actions we're going to take forward here. So there actually is, and I didn't know this till last week, an International Association for Participation, Public Participation, and this is their model. And you can see that it runs the gamut from inform and consult and involve, collaborate, and empower. But we're going to talk about the far end of that spectrum there. So it's the collaboration and empowerment that's really the powerful thing here. So just want to think it's, we spend a lot of time, people talk about it's important to get buy-in. But buy-in is a very specific thing. Buy-in is about decide and then defend. Someone else had the idea, made the decision, designed a plan, and then say, well, what do you think? Okay, engagement is a very different thing. It's about what we call place-based intelligence. It's when citizens co-create the ideas, make the decisions, co-design the plans, and then act on them. That's a whole different order of involvement. So first of all, why bother doing this? I mean, it's easy to give lip service to this stuff, but it's actually hard work. And it's, as some people talk, the Swedish example, it's risky. But there are huge benefits when you get it right. So first of all, why bother? This is a simple diagram. The idea is, there's a natural human tendency to resist decisions that have been made on your behalf. There's wait a minute, before, I agree to anything, there's natural kind of barriers go up. So when the decision's made up front, all that resistance and indifference is going to come one way or another. It's going to come fighting your decision, or there's a lot of energy, cost, involvement in then bringing people back to where you want. If you make the decision, if you start to involve people earlier, They get a chance to work through their resistance and indifference or whatever, and then you make decisions together with them, then they're all ready then to okay, let's move on, let's get some things happening. So the first order of why do engagement, or why engage, is really the idea of reducing your risk. The second one, and this is a big category, I mean, there are lots of sub-things in here, but it's really about authenticity, is one of the things that we've talked about. It's the genius loci of a place. Okay, every place is different. It does have its own DNA, and you have to know what really matters in your place, and you can't know that alone. So you can only know that with the people themselves. So San Francisco's planning lead quote here, we believe in public spaces that are about the ideas and aspirations of the public themselves and not us telling them what they should be aspiring to. And I think the aspiration here is the key thing. Where do we want to go together? What does that future look like? And the third one is really about the network effect. And this is what we call our declaration of interdependence. Today, no business, no place, no organization succeeds alone. So in a world where we're all interdependent, it's about where value is in the connections you create, the communities you engage, and the collaborations you enable. That's the real value. That's what powers everything else. So I'm going to give you an example of this. I live and work in Toronto, so Waterfront Toronto is an organization that works with 3 levels of government: federal, provincial, municipal. They manage it's a 25-year plan for revitalizing Toronto's waterfront, which is 29 miles of waterfront. It's the largest revitalization project in North America right now. So Waterfront Toronto has, right from the get-go, committed to deep public engagement. They saw themselves as stewards of this is an enormous defining project for Toronto's future. And there's a quote from a newspaper here, one of the city commentators talking about this tripartite agency for 15 years, presided over a spectacular rebirth of Toronto's long-neglected lakeside precincts, and is among the most transparent public corporations around. They had to earn that the deep skepticism when, how could a group like this actually pull this off? And then, the benefits that they're getting out of this, first of all, better quality ideas and inputs. The decisions stick. Yes, it takes longer, but you're not fighting the rear guard afterwards. And this was a quote from the CEO I talked to last week, who said, people will accept no for an answer if they know they've been heard and considered. So again, you're not fighting all sorts of people who feel like their agenda hasn't been addressed. And real community ownership of the outcomes. So, this is great. They've been doing fantastic work. They've built a strong community with a lot of patience and understanding. And then, you've all heard of Rob Ford talk about defining, our former crack-smoking mayor and misogynist and all sorts of other things. He has a brother who was also in city council, and they decided they didn't like what Waterfront Toronto was doing. They wanted to speed things up, so they were just basically going to hijack 10 years worth of community development to put a big Ferris wheel and stuff on the waterfront. And so what was fascinating is that the public fought back. Code Blue TO was a spontaneous response from citizens who said, "Don't you dare! That is our waterfront." They mobilized within hours. Suddenly, there was all this social media and all of this. There were community action meetings across the city, and the most important thing here is supporting the people's plan for Toronto's Portlands. The people's plan is because Waterfront Toronto had done their job consistently, built that trust over a number of years, and people said, no, 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 you don't make unilateral decisions like that, City Hall, forget it. And we're able to mobilize 9,000 social media supporters in 2 weeks. Basically, the happy outcome is that all of that nonsense went away. But so there's a certain amount of, somebody talked earlier a couple times about trust building. Well, trust building is a fundamental thing. It's common sense. You be honest, you say what you're doing and why, you listen respectfully, that's probably the most important part, and then you deliver. You actually respond and say, we heard you, great ideas, here's where we're going next. So the last part here is that there's really no excuse today not to do some really interesting engagement because it's cost effective, there's great technology that will support all that. So just give you a quick view of this. So this is a huge burgeoning field. If any VC people are out there who want to invest in stuff, there are some great tools that are emerging. First of all, the places where it's been used, being used, not only place brand development, but community benefits agreements. Has anybody heard of these? It's a burgeoning thing in the US where a city will attract businesses to a certain area, a neighborhood. They'll give them some economic, tax benefits and that sort of stuff. That money goes directly back to that community, and using these kinds of tools to say to the community, what do you want us to do with the money that we're getting from these community benefits? Certainly economic development and participatory budgeting. Is anybody in your cities doing this now? A couple. There's an example here from Hartford. It's based in Hartford, Connecticut. They're basically gamifying the budgeting process and inviting citizens to participate. So it says up there, where the money goes, spending, it says you're in deficit right now. What kind of trade-offs are you going to make? So it's really helping to the public to understand the complexity. Some of the tools that are available, this is just top of the iceberg. Change by Us, MetroQuest, My Sidewalk, IdeaScale, Town Hall, CrowdGauge. They're all great platforms. We all bring different strengths and weaknesses to them. I want to talk specifically about Neighborland because I think it's one of the most interesting ones. And what Neighborland has done, is based out of San Francisco, is they have resolved the online-offline issue. They actually have developed complementary on-site tools as well as online tools. Most of the other solutions are online, which is great, but a whole bunch of people who are, that's not accessible. Their mission is really to ensure that, even homeless people can, or people with no technology or whatever, can participate in citizen discussions. And this is, so a couple, whatever platform you use, a couple tips that you should think about. And number one is be inclusive. Open platform that everybody can engage in. The second one, and this is one that I particularly like their solution, is the visibility. It's not enough to have, if you find it, there might be a website where you could participate in a conversation. But how do you know it's there? And how much money do you have to promote, to tell people to go there? This kind of thing where it's in a public place, big display, people know there's a conversation going on, and it's an invitation to participate. The third one is, like any good ecosystem, you have to provide feedback loops. And the beauty of all of these tools is they allow people to not only engage in what you're doing, but find like-minded people. So, it'll say 519 neighbors want a night market in the city civic center in San Francisco. Well, great, now there's a critical mass. The city can respond to that, but so can the community. And a number of these programs allow citizens to self-select that, oh, you're interested in bike lanes, so am I. Let's see what we can do in our neighborhood. So that feedback loop is not just for you and your project, but it's for the whole community. And the third one is the share the big picture. So give people a sense of, what is going on, what's the response. All that big data is great, should be shared not only with the project people, but everybody who's participating. So the last tip that I'd leave with you is trust the system. Yeah, it's not perfect, but the wisdom of the crowd has a lot going for it. And think about your role is not to be, the Uber orchestrator or Uber decision maker, but to play that role as orchestrator. So managers should define no more than is absolutely necessary. Minimum specs here. Avoid the role of grand designer in favor of one that focuses on facilitation, orchestration, setting boundaries, boundary management, creating enabling conditions that allow a system to find its own form. That's the authenticity there. It's see what emerges and go from there. So leave you all with a quote from Candy Chang, who's one of the founders of Neighborland. Our public spaces are as profound as we allow them to be. I think that's great advice for everybody here, so thank you.